Okay, thanks for tuning in for our Vermont real estate market update for August 4th, 2023. Today, we're going to dig into what's happening with the interest rates in the market, of course, and what's happening with the Fed interest rate. We're going to dig into what's happening with the local and national numbers as far as median sales price and days on market and stuff like that. And we're also going to take a look at what's happening with millennial home buyers and how their numbers have not quite met the predictions and expectations that some people thought they would be at this point. And we're going to dig into what the reasons might be behind that as well. So let's start right away. Let's take a look at the federal interest rates and what's happening with that. What's known as the Fed funds rate, which was just raised this is an article from July 26th. We see at that meeting they just had, Jerome Powell raised the rate from 5.25 to 5.5%, as we see here. At the meeting back in June, they indicated that 2 rate hikes might be coming this year, but the markets are currently pricing in a better than even chance that there won't be any more moves this year. So based on various indicators in the actual trading markets, maybe there's not going to be another rate hike. And Jerome Powell did say that at the next meeting, on a meeting-by-meeting basis, they would be making this data-driven decision. So it's possible maybe they're not going to raise it. Now, of course, this Fed funds rate is what's tied into how banks borrow money and what affects the borrowing rate for mortgage borrowers, of course. And we're going to talk about that in just a second, what those current rates are. And he said that it does still have a long way to go, Jerome Powell, that they are hitting their target 2% inflation number. But still, he seemed to leave room that he could potentially hold the rate steady at the next meeting in September. So we don't know what's going to happen in that next meeting, but maybe there'll be a little bit of relief or just at least not another increase in the rate. And that'll hold the mortgage rate steady, if not pull them back slightly. So let's dig into what's happening in the actual housing market now, too. And the biggest news, again, has to do with mortgage payments and interest rates. So let's look at some of these leading indicators of home buying activity for the week ending August 3rd. The average 30-year fixed mortgage rate was 6.9%, slightly higher than a week earlier and slightly lower than the half-year high hit 3 weeks earlier. The daily average was 7.2% on August 3rd. We see that the median home sale price was $380,000, up 3.2% from a year earlier. That's the biggest increase since November. But here's a really important one. This is what we were talking about before. The mortgage payment on a median asking price home was $2,605 at this current rate of 6.9%. For the week ending August 3rd. That's down about 1% from the record high hit 3 weeks earlier, but it's up 19% from where it was a year ago, and that is significant. And we talked a little bit in the last episode, if you can check it out on YouTube, about what was happening with affordability and the mortgage payment reflected as a percentage of your monthly income and how that's been changing over time. So it's not necessarily as bad as this is reflecting, but there has been an increase in the actual nominal amounts by 19% on average of what people are paying for their monthly mortgage payment for a median asking price home. New listings for homes fell 21.3% year over year. It's the smallest decline year over year in 3 months, but still it is significant. And we can see some of these things demonstrated in the graphs here. This is the median sale price, up 3.2% year over year. Median asking price, similar thing. Homebuyer housing payments we see are $2,605. If you were to go back about 19-20% to where the median mortgage payment was last year around this time, we can see it was closer to about $2,200, about $400 less. So that is significant, and obviously it's been doing that every year for the last 4 years as well. Pending sales down 14% year over year, so there's less homes being sold. New listings way down, 21% down from where they were this time last year. Active listings for homes for sale, same thing. So this is all reflecting the same kind of thing. The higher interest rates are keeping the supply down. Again, 2.9 months of supply available in the market. This is known as inventory. The way to look at this is that if no other homes came on the market, it would take 2.9 months for all the current inventory to be sold. What's considered a balanced or healthy market is closer to 5 to 6 months of inventory. So we are way, way below what's considered to be a balanced market, which makes this very much a seller's market. As we talked about, the interest rates are keeping some sellers from putting their homes in the market, even though they know they have an increase in equity. But for people who are willing to sell right now, they're getting record high prices and their homes are selling quickly. So the buyers out there have very little to pick from. So you're usually getting multiple offers. and over asking price offers as well. So it's not a bad time to sell if you can sell right now. Okay, so let's see what's happening in our local market here in Chittenden County. And you can see some numbers going across the screen for what's happening in Greater Burlington, which is really Chittenden County, Franklin County, and Grand Isle County combined. But let's just take a look at this Chittenden County, what's been happening here. Let's start with median sale price. And as we discussed in our previous market update, the threshold for price for this year was about to cross over and break through the previous year's record prices. And we see here for 2023, we had a peak here of 507 and 507 back here on June 11th as well. And you see the 2022 numbers, they were in this same area. I mean, right now we're a little bit lower. We're at 497 for the most recent number for the median sale price. And if you see last year for the week ending August 7th, it was 501,000. So it's either, you could either say it's above it or it's right at where it was last year, but we are still hitting record median sale prices here for Chittenden County. That, of course, has to do with the low inventory. If you want to take a look at new listings here, what's been happening here, we are currently 52.5% below where we were a year ago, with in Chittenden County currently 19 new listings for the week, the 4-week period ending July 30th. Pending sales, same thing. You're going to see the same kind of graphs here where the blue line for 2023 is below where it was last year. Number of homes sold. You can see this is taking a dramatic turn downwards, which is also what was happening last year as far as just the trend in the season. But again, we're still way below where we were last year. So there's not that many homes to sell right now. There's less homes selling, and that's pushing the median sale price up. Now, we talked about another factor that might be playing into this as well, is what's happening with millennial buyers. So let's take a look at that. Millennials right now, if you see this chart here of the U.S. population by age, you have the different generations here. Gen Z and millennials and Gen X, that's me, baby boomers and silent generation. Baby boomers, they sort of break it into older boomers and younger boomers because it's such a large range there. But if you see right here that millennials, they make up the largest portion of the U.S. population right now, the largest percentage. And since they started tracking this data since 1981, the average age of a first-time home buyer used to be between 28 and 33. But if you see where this red line is here right now, this is 36. That's the current age of a first-time home buyer on average. So that's jumped way up. It's gone higher. The millennials are waiting longer to buy homes for the first time, it appears. This other red line, or sort of purplish line here, I'm not sure how the color comes across, but this other line here shows the average age of a repeat buyer, which is currently 59. So now let's talk about this. Let's look at one more metric here. Usually, if we're looking at all transactions throughout the year for primary residences, the percentage of those that were first-time homebuyers traditionally was around 40%. If you look at this time from 1981, again, when they started tracking this data, you can see that it was mostly around, it went up and down a little bit, but it averaged around 40%. And we're currently sitting at 26%. So that's pulled back as well. And if we look at what's maybe holding back first-time buyers, saving for their down payments right now, the most cited hurdles are high rent, car loans, credit cards, student loans, childcare costs. This is affecting everything. This is another interesting metric right here as far as millennials. This has to do with first-time buyers in general. And this blue line here represents people that were living with a family member or a relative prior to buying their first home. And the gray line here on this graph represents people who were renting before that. So if you go back to previous years, previous to 2022, the numbers were mostly about in the 70s, 70-something% for people who were renting before buying their first home. And the people who were living with a family member or relative was around 21% or 20%. And you see currently that's around 27% of those first-time buyers were living with a family member at home before buying that home. And only 64% of them were renting. So that's the highest share ever recorded as far as that for people moving directly from a family member's home into their first home. We see here another metric here that talks about for people who are under 35, what percentage of them own a home. And for Gen Xers, baby boomers and Gen Xers, the home ownership rate for people under 35 was usually around 39.7%. And you can see that there's yet to be a year that millennials have reached that. If you see here, most recently, they were getting pretty close to maybe 39%, but they never quite got to that point for people under 35. So that's another metric. Now, this is very interesting too. And if you want to think about who's more likely to be able to spend cash purchasing a home, it's going to be baby boomers over millennials. Millennials are more likely to have children, first of all, they're still taken care of, and they're going to have those child care costs and other additional costs, whereas baby boomers are more likely to be empty nesters and not have those same costs. So if you see here, 51% of older boomers and 32% of younger boomers were paying all cash for their most recent purchase, which makes them the likely winner if there's a bidding war on the home. So that's also putting millennial buyers at a disadvantage right now as they try to compete against older buyers who have who are more likely to have cash to make that purchase. And those cash buyers, of course, are not dealing with the higher interest rates. It's not a factor for them. But one more thing that I thought was pretty interesting here was this. If I can find this article here for you. And this has to do, again, with millennial home buyers. Now 50% of millennials do own homes. And as you can see here in this graph, millennials, they were, as the 2000s started, not many of them owned homes yet. They weren't quite that old yet. But now, currently, they're at 51.5%. But if you see here that Gen X, when they were the same age, they generally owned, about 58% of them owned homes. So millennials are still way behind that sort of metric there. But this one here, too, it really kind of interesting. We saw the difficulties with making a down payment right now and dealing with interest rates. But if you look at this, in this most recent survey, 25% of millennial renters say they will rent forever, and 2/3 have no money set aside for a down payment. So this is probably a factor as well, because if millennials are the biggest portion of our home buying potential population, and they're buying homes at a rate that was, especially with first-time buyers, that's well below what the expectations were. And again, all these factors of higher child care costs and loans and credit cards and car loans, and what's happening with the interest rates in the market for borrowing and reducing their buying power, not to mention competing against cash buyers in the boomer generation. I think all these factors together are probably things that should be considered when looking at what's happening with the market. So that's about all there is to say today on our market update, and just wrapping it up here. Hopefully we'll have some relief from the Fed in September, and they won't raise the rates again, but we'll see what happens. If you're thinking about selling your home and you've had some concerns, especially with stuff we've talked about in this program, feel free to give me a call anytime or email me at mike@thelaventeam.com. All the information needed to contact me is below this video. So feel free to contact me anytime if you have questions about your property or just anything you want to talk about in the world of real estate. Anyways, thanks for checking out this market update. I hope you'll check out the next one in a few weeks, and I'll see you soon.